working? Can you hear me? Perfecto. Un placer estar con ustedes aquí hoy en día. It's really a pleasure to be here with you here today. A great honor, and also it truly warms my heart to see folks who are Latinos, who look like me, who are in technology, who are investors, who are really leading innovators and on the forefront of this conversation. So, really delighted to be here at this first LSA Summit with you all, and hopefully be a part of history, as Jesse and Deldep have told me, that we're making here today. A little bit about myself and how I came to be here. You'll notice that the keynote, what I'm going to be talking about today, is specifically the first ever Latino pre-conference before South by Southwest. My involvement in this technology space started about a decade ago. I directed the Latino Outreach for Presidential campaign, and when I did that, this was back in the Dean days, the Clark days. If you remember those days, can you raise your hand? Okay, a handful. So what was really exciting for me was I got into it through the political space, and what was really interesting was technology was being leveraged really to disrupt what was happening previously as it related to political campaigns. And it was really being used in a way not only that we were pushing out messages, but that we were actually enabling the community to be able to engage, share their perspectives, and actually become activists themselves. So that was the foray and kind of how I first got involved. But directing the Latino Outreach, I gotta tell you, even though these campaigns were very progressive and very cutting edge, when I talked about, let's use this technology for the Latinos, they would say to me, but Latinos aren't online. You know, there's a digital divide. There's no Latinos that we can really reach with these technologies. And so it was 10 years ago, through those conversations, that I realized, we needed to change that perception because we were online. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we're such a diverse community. You know, we have folks who are new immigrants. We have folks who are the kids of immigrants. We have folks that were here before the border crossed them. So really tapping into the full spectrum of who we are as a community, acknowledging the truth of the digital divide that does exist, that is very real, but at the same time, the fact that because we're such a multifaceted community, there are folks like you who are, in fact, empowered already through technology. And so my path led me to then become a serial entrepreneur myself through technology, because in addition to saying, hey, there are Latinos in technology, I said, wait a second, I need to be a part of the solution, not just say that there are others of us out there. And so I created the first a progressive Christian online community called crossleft.org back in the day. This is around 2004. And stayed involved in that community for a while. Then created, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Sanctuary, promigrant.org. We got a lot of visibility around the 2008 campaign, trying to bring attention to Latino issues. Immigration definitely being one of the key Latino issues, but not the only one, right? Our country and the people in our country need to be sensitive to that issue as a Latino issue, but so is education. So is the economy. Jobs, job creation, entrepreneurship, et cetera. And so we created a questionnaire, and leveraging technology and digital assets, we actually created a lot of momentum and a lot of visibility that transcended into the mainstream. Later in my career, I worked for an agency, some of you might have heard of it, Ogilvy and Mather. And when I worked for them, we talked about 360. And how your approach from a digital perspective can't just be isolated as a silo, but it actually needs to leverage the other forms of communications as well. And so what was so exciting for me was that you had a bunch of bloggers really kind of bootstrapping it, creating this platform, creating this conversation in this community. And the presidential candidates responded to us. We ended up on CNN, HITN, PBS, and the Obama campaign, who was not talking about issues that were of import to our community, the second time I went on CNN, had responded to our survey and had started to talk about these issues. And so I became very aware of the fact that we existed, that there were many of us, and that we were really passionate about driving this change and making this difference. So in 2008, I was working as the new media manager for National Council of La Raza, the first new media manager. They were really trying to dive into digital and how to leverage that as an old guard civil rights organization that hadn't really done that much in that space before. And I had the opportunity to be involved with South by Southwest. And that's kind of how the South by Southwest link starts and what I want to talk to you about today. And I went there and I was struck by the fact that despite everything that I shared with you earlier and knowing that there were pockets of us innovating and doing really interesting things online, at South by, there really weren't Latinos. And this was in Texas. And I was dumbfounded, because I would leave the convention center and there were Latinos everywhere. And then I would go into the convention center and I was like, where is everyone else that kind of looks like me? And so I was really struck by the tremendous opportunity that existed and realized in subsequent years it wasn't just South by. This was true in the technology space in general. And what a tremendous opportunity it was, and how important it was to name this elephant in the room, to speak to it, to address it, and to try and shift what we were seeing. I also became very inspired by Blacks in Tech, who I saw at South by Southwest that first time that I went. And over the course of the next several years, so from 2008 was when I first got involved, to 2013, I spoke pretty much every year at South by Southwest, with the exception of 1 year. Because we all have to do work-life balance, and so really wanted to make sure that was present in my life, but with the exception of that, was there every other year speaking and trying to bring attention and visibility through the panels that I was doing, through the workshops I was doing, the different conversations I was having about the opportunity there was to have more Latinos at the table. And I would try and highlight different Latinos that were doing great work in what I was sharing. Probably the highlight for me of all of that experience, one of the key highlights was in 2010. This is before South by Southwest said you can only do one panel. That's what they say now. So back in 2010, they still let you do multiple. So I did 3 different things that year. The first thing that I did is I was involved in the convention center itself, which I think is critical. It's important for us to gather as a community like this together, but it's also important for us to be immersed and to be at the table in these larger conversations so that we're not working in isolation or lifting ourselves up in isolation. And so this first meeting that I was a part of, it was a panel actually. There were folks from Univision on my panel, Coca-Cola, and also some other companies. And the room fit about 300 to 400 people, and it was very diverse, but lacked Latino participation. And so I looked out into the room and I said, tremendous opportunity, right? So the second one that I did, I actually had the good fortune, the Blacks in Tech community invited me to be one of their panelists. They decided to do an event at the Carver Cultural Center, and they had someone from the Asian community, someone from the Latino community, that was myself representing, and then someone, 2 people actually, talking about the Black in Tech experience. And that was absolutely phenomenal, really exciting, and to me it was really cool because it actually reached into the community as well. And so we thought, let's do the same thing for Latinos in tech. And so we did that. It was 2010, so the same time as the census. It was packed, standing room only, which proved to me that this hypothesis that there was a hunger, there was a desire, and there was a population that wanted to be a part of this conversation was in fact accurate. And it was, to me, again, one of the highlights because we were there as participants, but we were also there as panelists. So some of you might have heard of Marcos Mulita Zuniga, who is the founder of the Daily Kos, Marisa Treviño, who is the founder of Latinalista, Julie Diaz-Asper, serial entrepreneur, Diana Cuellar, also a serial entrepreneur. So we had this panel of Latinos who were able to represent as experts in our own right, in our own space. And I kept on having this conversation with South by Southwest and with other technology conferences, and just in general, whenever I saw that I was the only one, the only Latino in general, or Latina specifically. Daldup calls us unicorns. I love that phrase. I think that's so true. And we're not unicorns, and we shouldn't be unicorns, but many times it's like we are because we're the only ones. And so fast forward to 2013, last year, and I was on a panel again with the head of LULAC, with someone who has this really cool app to measure different polling, participation, and people's interest from a survey perspective. And some of you might know also Estuardo from the Raven Group. And you know, we had a great panel. It was a wonderful conversation. But I found out after that panel, someone came to me and said, do you realize there were only 2 Latino panels at South by Southwest this year? So I haven't researched to make sure if that's true or not, because those of you that know South by Southwest know that there's a plethora of things going on. But the fact that multiple people came and told me that made me say, oh my goodness, what I've been doing, honestly, it hasn't been that effective. We've made incremental, tiny baby steps. Some of you might know el dicho, un pasito para adelante, uno para atrás, right? Or un pasito para adelante, dos para atrás. So 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And realizing that there were maybe only 2 at that huge interactive conference where you have so many different verticals represented, including startup folks, including programmers, including people that work for agencies leveraging digital, including folks that are leveraging digital for social change, that there were only 2, I said, wow, we really need to think of something transformational. How do we change the game? And so I was very fortunate. There was a gentleman that participated in my panel. He was in the audience. Some of you might know him, Mario Lugay. He works for the Keynote Center. And we were talking, how do we take things to the next level? How do we really create not incremental change, but systemic change? And we came up with this idea of doing this first Latino pre-conference to South by Southwest. And I've been in conversations with them because I think it's important for them to be integrated, involved, in the loop, and in the know. But it's our conference, and we're putting it together, looking at trying to find the top or the most influential, engaged Latinos who are in technology. And how do we define that? We define that as several verticals. One of the most important is your vertical, the startup vertical. The vertical of people who are actually creating these new disruptive technologies and platforms. You're the creators, right? So that's one. Another one is the programmers who are kind of, some of them are folded into that, but some are also not. There are programmers, coders doing great things in technology that aren't necessarily in the startup world. So that's another vertical we're looking at. A third vertical we're looking at is we're also looking at the vertical of las blogueras, los blogueros, super powerful. It's a tremendous communication vehicle that has disrupted the way that everyone basically is trying to share their ideas, their thoughts, talk about their products, et cetera. So that's another vertical. And so we have all of these different verticals from which we're going to be selecting a handful of people. The application process is already live. If you go to the Keynote Center website, and you look at Latinos in Tech, that's where you can apply to be considered to participate for the event, which will be the day before South by Southwest Interactive starts, so that's March 6th. And again, we're selecting about 50 Latinos in Tech to represent these different verticals, and the idea is for this to be our conference, a conference where we are bringing the conversation, we are bringing the solutions, we are talking about the challenges, but not just to talk about the challenges. We're talking about the challenges to say, what's next? And how can we solve them? And I love that piece about action items, right? How do we move this forward? Because this is not something isolated. We see this as the first of a continual series. Again, I've been on this kind of talk, or on this mission since 2008, but this we see as a tipping point, and then we see continuing with pre-conferences every year after that. And how involved will we be with South by Southwest? That's still to be determined. We're in conversations with them. We know Blacks in Tech have had a really great relationship for many years that has looked different ways in different years. And so we're open and flexible to what our relationship looks like. But we want to make sure that the change is systemic and that we are leading the change. And we think it's fantastic that there are allies, that there are people who want to invest in our community, that there are people who want to help us who are not Latinos. We're all about that. We think that's going to really help get us to the next level. However, that alone is not the solution. We are convinced that the solution is for us to truly be the leaders that are helping to also create that transformational change. And so that's why we've kind of done this as a pre-conference to go before South by Southwest. It's going to be a one-day event. It's going to start in the morning and run till about 4 p.m., and then we're going to do una fiesta. We want to get a chance to network and have some fun together and share a little bit in a party. And the actual content of the agenda will be determined by the participants. So we already have a handful of phenomenal folks from the different verticals that I started sharing with you who have applied over the last week and a half or so. And the process is once you get selected and we say, yep, we want you to come to the conference, you totally need to be there. Then if you want to do a panel or a workshop, you tell us, hey, this is the panel or workshop that I want to do. And then we're going to vet it and say, okay, these are the handful that we're going to select. And so through the course of the day, those 50 folks that are there are going to be able to create content, basically, right, for this conversation and for us to move things forward. But some of the elements, just so you know, kind of the topics that we're thinking about and looking at and that we're really interested in is One, this whole startup conversation, and how do we grow stronger as a community? And you know, Deldep and I, we've had many a conversation where we talk about lifting all boats, and we are committed. The core of this idea is for us to do this together. We think that we have much more strength if we lift each other up together, and the pie is huge. You know, there's so much to be able to create, to do, to explore. And if you look at our demographics and the numbers, the potential is huge. And so there's that huge opportunity right there between the potential and what can be manifested. And that's what we're interested in talking about during that period of time. And so one of the things is definitely investments that we want to also be talking about, because the truth is, one problem is just in general, okay, where are the Latino startup folks, right? Which is why it's so amazing to see you all here today. So felicidades. But then number two, where's the money for the Latino startup folks, right? Because if you have a great idea, but you're not able to get the investment, if there are barriers that exist that are institutional, historical, relational, whatever, that obviously is going to be a big challenge as well. But then we also want to have conversations, like I said, the blogueras. So we're going to have a track that focuses on that specifically. And we're also, two cool ideas that came in already from the participants themselves that I thought were great. We haven't selected them yet, but just so you can start thinking about what are some of the possibilities. One was leveraging technology for social change. And so that came through, and it's a really interesting proposition, the way that the panel has been put together for that. And then another one that we're looking at is this whole question of remittances and how technology is being leveraged in order to make an economic impact that's transnational, that's not here just focused in the US, but that extends beyond boundaries. So again, I would love to invite all of you to be a part of the solution, to be a part of this. Mitch Kapor will be here, I know, later today, also doing a keynote, and he has some slides where he'll be sharing, I think, a little more on this as well. They are one of the key partners. There are 3 partners that are putting this together. They are one of the key partners, myself, and also Ana Flores. Some of you might know her from Latina Bloggers Connect. And so again, would invite all of you to submit, to participate. If you want to be participants, we're also looking for investors and sponsors. So if you're interested in being an investor or a sponsor, we would welcome your contribution. You can reach me if you have any further questions too, personally at Kety. That's Kety, Esquivel @gmail.com. And I am also one of you. So I'm a startup person myself now as well. After doing the trajectory that I shared earlier, I have a new company that I'm starting up, Loca Monkeys. And what we're doing with that is we're actually looking to leverage technology and gaming to be able to help with language acquisition. And our first 2 markets are here in the US. We're looking at people who are interested in having their kids learn Spanish, and I have a very personal reason for that. I'm pregnant, 7 months pregnant, and I am committed. My husband is not Latino, but we are committed to our child being bilingual, bicultural. So, teniendo las dos cosas, lo mejor de los dos, right? Having the best of both worlds, the best of both things. And then the second market, my partner is from China. And her father is actually a very successful Chinese businessman. And so we are looking at China being our second market, and specifically English. In the Chinese market, we have a really good structure which exists in schools throughout China, where we're going to be able to launch this product. And so really excited about that. But I share that with you because to me, that's part of the reason that I want us to be successful collectively, right? And I want to be a part of this community, and I also want to be a resource and an asset to you. So I would ask if there's anything I can do to serve as y'all are moving forward with your enterprises, to please let me know. Again, that's Kety, Esquivel @gmail.com, or at Kety on Twitter, Ketye. And if you're interested in the venture that I'm working on, and you think that there's a way for us to collaborate or work together, I'd love to hear that too. So hoping to see you at South by Southwest, if not before then, and hoping you all will apply to be a part of this pre-conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kety. I love that woman. We met many, many years ago, and we've managed to keep a connection going, and I definitely appreciate that. And that's the power of social media, because I think without that, it would have been a lot more difficult for us to keep in touch with each other.